Good morning, everyone. We're so glad that you've joined us today. I'm Lucy Bunch, one of the ministers honored to serve the Unitarian Universalist Society of Sacramento. With us this morning are the Reverend Roger Jones, our music director, Keith Atwater, pianist Irina Chanceva, and our technical staff, Dirk Toole and Ivan Caballero. Our worship associate today is Jed Shapiro. This month's Soul Matters theme is imagination, and our service topic today is invisible companions. Reverend Roger will preach about the experience of having imaginary friends. Now, though I can't see you, I know that all of you who are watching are not imaginary, and I know that some of you are new to us, and I want to welcome you especially. If you are new, we ask you to fill out our newcomer form at uus.org/newcomers. It's a great way to get connected and to receive our weekly message. You can see the address in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. Our official greeter this morning is Hallie Kasai. If you type "I'm new" in the chat box, Hallie will reach out to you with a private message so that you can get connected to our congregation. Although our buildings are closed, our hearts are open, and our congregation is active. Go to uuss.org to check out our weekly message and our weekly calendar for all the information you need about what is going on. I want to highlight a couple of activities coming up this week. This Saturday, please join us for a family breakfast on Zoom. We meet at 9 a.m. in this Zoom room that you entered here. So cook up your eggs and griddle your cakes and join us for some fun and just being together. Next Sunday, after the service at 3 p.m., we invite all of you to join us for a celebration of UU Communion, again here in this same Zoom room. We welcome all who are respectfully curious and all who are longing to participate in an ancient ritual of remembrance and renewal. Please have with you a wafer or any other piece of bread, as well as a small cup of wine, fruit juice, or water. And then finally, I want to remind you that our service auction is coming up. Have you registered and bought your dinner tickets? It all starts on February 28th with a silent auction and culminates on March 13th with a gourmet carry-out dinner and a live online auction. It's also time for you to be planning your donation, and we have consultants available to help you find the perfect COVID-safe activity. You can access all the information you need at uuss.org/auction or find the links in the weekly message. The last day for donations is February 12th. We appreciate your support for this important fundraiser for our congregation. We love to start our services by singing together, and this morning we will be singing the hymn, We Are. We'll join along with Issei Barnwell from Sweet Honey in the Rock and the choir from our General Assembly of Unitarian Universalists last summer online.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth, keepers of faith, makers of peace, and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are one.
And now I want to say good morning to Jed Shapiro. Good morning, Jed.
Good morning, Lucy. As we prepare for chalice lighting to celebrate at home, please get your chalice or candle ready as words of chalice lighting are spoken. O flaming chalice, symbol of a free faith, burn with the holy oil of compassion and service. Spread thy warmth and light and hope.
Warm all the hearts grown cold with indifference. Light the shadowed places with justice. Rekindle hope in times of despair.
May we bring fuel for thy fire of love. May the oil of loving kindness flow from us to thy leaping flame.
May hands of service shelter thee, that no winds of hate may extinguish thy brightness.
May thy light and warmth be forever. May we all be keepers of thy flame.
At this time, we come together to bring our joys and sorrows, our worries, grief, and gratitude into this beloved community. If you would like to tell us what's on your heart this morning, please open the chat box at the bottom of your screen and type in what you'd like to share. Please make sure that the message is going to everyone, not a private message. If you see that it is a private message, just click on the little triangle and choose the option for everyone. And if you would like to read what others have shared, you can open the chat box on the upper right. Those of you on Facebook may share among yourselves while we all enjoy a gift of music from Arena. Let us begin. Thanks to everyone who shared, and thanks to those who witnessed the joys and sorrows presented today. What a week. I hope you had a chance to watch the inauguration this past Wednesday. I was so inspired by the words and music that I really felt something starting to shift in my body, some tension breaking away, some openings like the clouds parting. The fear and trauma and pain of the last 4 years is starting to release, and I could really see the possibility of what is to come. And I was especially inspired by that beautiful poem by Amanda Gorman, the youngest presenter of a poem at an inauguration, 22 years old. She asked us to recommit to a vision of beloved community, recommit to our country's ideals. And she ended with these words: "When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if we are only brave enough to see it, if we are only brave enough to be it." So for our time of prayer this morning, I wanted to honor her words by feeling these ideas in our bodies in a short visioning exercise. So you can stand or sit for this, whatever's most comfortable for you. I think standing, if you're able, can be a bit more of a powerful experience. So let's get ready. And what I ask you to do is to raise your arms out, stretch them up. Now lift your eyes and gaze out to the horizon. What do you see in our future? Can you see the light of possibility for our country? Can you imagine dreams fulfilled? A world that is better than what we have now? Allow yourself to imagine this future, and with each breath, take a little bit more of this vision into your body, opening yourself up to the dawning of a new day. Now, as you lower your arms down and return to your seat, bring your vision and the feelings that you felt back into your body with you, and hold them in your heart as I lead us in prayer. Great Creator Spirit, help us to see the light of possibility for our country and for our world. Give us the courage and commitment to do our part, however our path unfolds. In the days ahead, we ask your support for us to stay positive, to step, to march, to strive with determination for the future that we dream about, the future we can see. Great loving Spirit, we have been lost. We have been lost and afraid. We have been angry and filled with despair. Help us to free ourselves from these burdens. Help us to free ourselves from what has held us back, and let us be brave enough to see the light. Help us to be brave enough to be the light. May we never lose sight of the vision of what is possible. Holy Spirit of life and love, we ask for strength, courage, and commitment today and in all the days to come. Blessed be. And now let us take a moment for the prayers in our own hearts.
The lone wild bird in lofty flight is still with thee, nor leaves thy sight. And I am thine, I rest in thee. Great Spirit, come and rest in me. The ends of the earth are in thy hand, the seas dark, deep, and far of land. And I am thine, I rest in thee. Great Spirit, come and rest in me. Now let's join Reverend Roger Jones for a story for all ages.
Good morning. It's good to be with you. Our story today is a book entitled Harold and the Purple Crayon, a book by Crockett Johnson. And this book is 65 years old. And it's a book about a child who uses his imagination for adventure and for comfort. One evening, after thinking it over for a while, thinking it over for some time, Harold decided to go for a walk in the moonlight. There wasn't any moon, and Harold needed a moon for a walk in the moonlight. And he needed something to walk on. He made a long, straight path so he wouldn't get lost. And he set off on his walk, taking his big purple crayon with him. But he didn't seem to be getting anywhere on the long, straight path. So he left the path for a shortcut across a field, and the moon went with him. The shortcut led right to where Harold thought a forest ought to be. He didn't want to get lost in the woods, so he made a very small forest with just one tree in it. It turned out to be an apple tree. The apples would be very tasty, Harold thought, when they got red. So he put a frightening dragon under the tree to guard the apples. It was a terribly frightening dragon. It even frightened Harold. He backed away. His hand holding the purple crayon shook. Suddenly he realized what was happening, but by then Harold was over his head in an ocean. He came up thinking fast, and in no time he was climbing aboard a trim little boat. He quickly set sail, and the moon sailed along with him. After he had sailed long enough, Harold made land without much trouble. He stepped ashore on the beach, wondering where he was. The sandy beach reminded Harold of picnics, and the thought of picnics made him hungry. So he laid out a nice, simple picnic lunch. There was nothing but pie, but there were all 9 kinds of pie that Harold liked best. When Harold finished his picnic, there was quite a lot left. He hated to see so much delicious pie go to waste. So Harold left a very hungry moose and a deserving porcupine to finish it up. And off he went looking for a hill to climb to see where he was. Harold knew that the higher up he went, the farther he could see. So he decided to make the hill into a mountain. And if he went high enough, he thought he could see the window of his bedroom. He was tired and he felt he ought to be getting to bed. He hoped he could see his bedroom window from the top of the mountain. But as he looked down over the other side, he slipped. And there wasn't any other side of the mountain. He was falling in thin air. But luckily, he kept his wits and his purple crayon. He made a balloon and grabbed onto it. And he made a basket under the balloon big enough to stand in. He had a fine view from the balloon, but he couldn't see his window. He couldn't even see a house. So he made a house with windows, and he landed the balloon on the grass in the front yard. None of the windows was his window. He tried to think where his window ought to be. He made some more windows. He made a big building full of windows. He made lots of buildings full of windows. He made a whole city full of windows. But none of the windows was his window. He couldn't think where it might be. He decided to ask a policeman. The policeman pointed the way Harold was going anyway, but Harold thanked him. And he walked along with the moon, wishing he was in his room and in bed. Then suddenly, Harold remembered. He remembered where his bedroom window was when there was a moon. It was always right around the moon. And then Harold made his bed. He got in it and he drew up the covers. The purple crayon dropped on the floor and Harold dropped off to sleep. Thank you for sharing that story with me of Harold and the purple crayon. Next, Jed Shapiro, our worship associate.
Generosity is a spiritual practice. Your gifts, given in the spirit of generosity, support the life and work of this community, and the work of our community includes reaching out to others in need. Every month, we give half of the Sunday offering to a local not-for-profit organization working with us to help heal the world. Our community partner for the month of January is Black Child Legacy Campaign. It is both startling and heartbreaking that in Sacramento County, African American children die at twice the rate of any other ethnicity. The Black Child Legacy Campaign is dedicated to prevention, intervention, and the interruption of violence to bring down the number of Black child deaths that occur here in our community. There are many ways to contribute: by text, at the UUSS website, by credit card, and by mail, as you'll see on the slide. We'll also post these in the chat. Thank you. Thank you for your generosity. Now Keith will lead us in gratitude for the offering.
We respond with a song. Please join me. May the spirit of gratitude bless and multiply all that we have, all that we give, and all that we receive. This morning's gift of music is by our very own Paula Joy Welter, a professional folk singer. She composed this song and recorded a CD several years ago. In it, she celebrates the imagination she had as a young girl, soaring off in the books she read. Her song is called Long Ago.
I can still see the tree that I climb so often, escaping from chores into wild frontiers. I traveled the world from New England to Scotland, through the pages of books filled with laughter and tears. I read Lassie Come Home and The Secret Garden, The Girl of the Limberlost, and Beautiful Joe. Little House on the Prairie had gone with the wind, and so many others that I loved long ago. Oh, time was my friend then, but now it's my rival. Gone are the chances to daydream in trees. My life is now spent in the game of survival, but those childhood stories linger on in my dreams. Someday when I'm old and have no need to hurry, I'll sit high in a tree, just remembering when. I'll sing with the birds and I'll have no need to worry, and return to a place filled with memories and friends. I'll read Lassie Come Home and The Secret Garden, The Girl of the Limberlost, and Beautiful Joe. Little House on the Prairie had gone with the wind, and so many others that I loved long ago. And so many others that I loved long ago.
Thank you, Paula Joy. It's great to hear your voice and it's great to see you. Thank you. My sermon message for you this morning is entitled Invisible Companions. We are lived by powers we pretend to understand. So wrote the late English writer W.H. Auden. We are lived by powers we pretend to understand. Our imagination is a way to bring those powers forward from within us, give shape to them, and embody a relationship with them. Relationships can enable us to grow in our capacity for love and care. This is true even if the relationships are invisible. This is the conclusion of the book, Invisible Companions, by J. Bradley Wigger. Wigger is a seminary professor who studies the spiritual development of children and adults, and he's a parent of grown children. With respect, kindness, and curiosity, his book describes the experiences of children who have relationships with imaginary friends. He and his research team interviewed many children and their parents in the US and abroad, across a variety of continents, cultures, and religions. From their study and earlier studies, they report that 1/4 to 1/2 of all children have had friends that most other people could not see. Imaginary friendships begin as early as age 2. Depending on the culture where the children live, the specific things they enjoy doing or talking about with their companions will vary. But in general, the experience is that of a creative, caring, and enjoyable connection. The friends are imaginary, but the friendships are strong and real. And the purpose of friendship, the purpose of relationship is to enlarge our experience of life and our capacity for love and care. Last week, I heard from a number of you about your own experiences or those of your children. One member of our church, whose daughter is now in her 20s, recounted this to me. When my little girl was 4, she had an imaginary friend named Mr. Nobody. She would ask to set a place at our dinner table, take walks with us, even buckle up like she had to for car rides. This mom said, I always accommodated Mr. Nobody's joining us when we spent our day together. Some kids have one invisible friend, some have several. Sometimes a pair of siblings will share an imaginary friend. Wigger introduces us to one family in which a younger boy created a friend and named him Baby Bear. He introduced him to his older brother, who then joined in the friendship. When an interviewer asked the two brothers to draw a picture of Baby Bear, their sketches did not match. Otherwise, the two boys spoke in similar ways about the personality of this friend. Using twigs, the brothers made, once the family went camping and their friend came too. And using twigs, the brothers made Baby Bear a little campsite of his own. It was a tiny replica of the family's campsite. They built a visible shelter for an invisible friend. Sometimes an imaginary situation gets worrisome or threatening to a child, but Wigger says that kids often remind themselves that it's only imaginary. A kid might say, there's no monster in here, it's just pretend. Or they can use their imagination to provide a solution, like, I'll be okay, my magic glove will protect me. In the storybook Harold and the Purple Crayon, which I read earlier, the child imagines a tall hill, then draws it as a mountain with his purple crayon. And then he climbs up the mountain. But the next page is blank. Without a backside to the mountain, Harold falls, tumbling into the open white space on the page. What does Harold do? Thinking quickly, he draws a hot air balloon and holds onto it and glides to the ground safely. Generally, a child knows their invisible friend is imaginary, but the friendship matters. Along the same lines, a child is aware that they are giving a doll or a stuffed animal its personality, but the personality they give to it is important. Such is the power of our imagination. Wigger interviewed a girl named Nicole, just about 3 years old. They sat in a preschool classroom, which he writes, was unoccupied except for us and a couple of invisible friends. Wigger brought a sheet of colorful stickers for Nicole. When she told him the names of the others in the room, he said, "Oh, would they like stickers too?" Nicole looked up at him, stared into his eyes for a moment, and then declared, "They're pretend." Wigger says, though she knew the difference between pretend friends and real ones, she seemed to be startled when I seemed not to. Then she said, "But I will take some stickers for my parents." When you share an imaginary world with others, it can be a time of bonding and love. When I was a child, we lived 2 blocks away from an elderly great aunt's home. She was my mother's aunt. I spent a lot of time at Aunt Edith's little house. Aunt Edith was known in the family as the least humorous and the least playful among her 5 siblings. Yet she played a game of imagination with me. In her kitchen was a curio cabinet of miniature pots and pans, china plates, bowls, coffee cups, and saucers. I would pretend to cook a meal for her and serve it on those tiny settings. "Come to dinner," I'd call. She'd come and sit down. I'd tell her what I made for her, and she would gobble down the invisible meal with approving sounds. Yum, 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 thank you. As a little kid, it would have been impossible for me to make a real dinner for her. Yet there was an urge in me to create something and give something to her, to show my love. As she joined with me in pretending, she recognized my urge to be generous, and she returned that love with her thanks and praise. Several years later, when I was a teenager, Aunt Edith was in decline with what I now look back on as dementia, depression, and anxiety. I think her medications made it worse. So did her adult daughter, who owned the house and lived with her. Prone to screaming, her daughter was resentful that she had to take care of her mother. She was also quite controlling. Aunt Edith would sit in her living room chair most of the day. Even with her walker and someone at her side, she was fearful about moving around her house. As a teenager, I sat with Aunt Edith many hours while her daughter ran errands or went out for a break. One afternoon I was there, and Edith said, "Hey, Raj, go with me into the kitchen so I can do the lunch dishes." I was floored by this request. She hadn't done any chores for months, but suddenly she imagined that it was possible, and she wanted to. There was no way I was going to tell her no. I got her walker, helped her up, and we shuffled to the kitchen. At the sink, I stood beside her as she washed a few dishes, and I dried them. We shuffled back, and she sat down, satisfied. So far as I know, she didn't mention our adventure to anyone. I didn't either. A member of Bradley Wigger's research team interviewed a girl named Jennifer along with her mom. When the researcher inquired about her invisible friends, he used the term pretend. Little Jennifer didn't answer. She just ignored him. Wrong word, her mother explained. They were invisible, of course, but calling her friends pretend was to diminish their importance in Jennifer's life. For this reason, the book uses the term invisible friend and invisible companion rather than imaginary. One of our church members told me that when she was 3 years old, she had an invisible friend who was a little dog named Cora. They didn't have a real dog, but she had Cora. Once the family took a vacation and stayed in a motel. She left Cora outside the room, but when it began to rain, she worried about Cora and couldn't get to sleep. Seeing her distress, her father went out in the rain. He picked up the invisible dog, carried her in, and then used a towel to dry her off. The little girl settled into a peaceful night's sleep. Was she reassured because her imaginary friend was there with her? Or was she reassured because of her dad's gesture of respect and care for what she cared about? Perhaps both. Bradley Wigger describes this use of our imagination as an as-if experience. While we may have some doubt about whether our invisible companions or somebody else's are truly there, we conduct ourselves as if they are. And in doing so, what matters is the quality of the relationship we experience. To use our very human gift of imagination means asking, what if? How about? Can we try? And it means to speak as if it is possible. In many cultures around the world, deceased ancestors are venerated, celebrated, and sought for advice and assistance to the living. The book Invisible Companions also explores the relationships that some people experience with departed loved ones and ancestors. Claudio Carvalhais is a Brazilian-American artist and professor. Shortly after he came to the US for graduate studies, his father passed away back home in Brazil. In the wake of that unexpected loss, Carvalhais began a daily practice of talking with his father. He would go to a coffee shop, buy 2 cups of coffee, one for himself and one for his father, and sit for a long time having an imaginary conversation with his invisible father across the table. He published their imaginary talks in a book, including poems, reflections, prayers, and songs that came out of those talks. It's entitled, Hi, Dad. When he married his wife and adopted her 3 children, Carvalhais wrote a letter to his dad. Stay with me, he wrote. Stand with me and help me to become what you did so well, a wonderful father. In the grace of our imagination, as Wigger says, the as if ultimately serves relationship, friendship, love. The as if. It doesn't matter if the invisible companion is really there or not. The relationship is. As Carvalhais recounts about his father, relationships don't end when another person's life ends. One of our members told me the story of her late father's decline from heart trouble and vascular dementia. During some episodes, he would become agitated and report that his mother had been calling him on the phone, even though she had passed away decades earlier. She was telling him that he had not visited home enough and he was due to go. Hours later, he could answer questions about a call. But the next day, when his daughter mentioned it, he waved her off as if she was being foolish. A few weeks before he passed away, a hospice chaplain came to visit them. She told the chaplain, he's been getting calls from his mother, telling him to come home. Her father was shocked to hear this. He interjected, but she's been dead for years. His daughter said, yes, I know that, but that doesn't mean you're not talking to her and she's not talking to you, telling you to come home. She said, I like the idea that one day someone might call me home, someone I loved. In reflecting on this experience, she said to me, it has reminded me to be open-minded for my children and my elders in the same ways, without diminishing my respect for another's experience. When we act as if unseen companions do exist, we imagine a relationship, and that makes it exist. And the purpose of a relationship is to enlarge our experience of life and enlarge our capacity for love and care. Whether it's a loved one, an ancestor, an imaginary friend, or a flesh and blood friend, or a community of people to whom we belong, what's important is relationship. Relationships can move us beyond ourselves. There is much we do not understand in this life, and we are moved by powers we cannot always explain. Therefore, let us live into the future with curiosity and openness. Let us live in the grace of our imagination. Let us live together as if respect and care are possible for everyone. So may it be. Blessed be, and amen. Keith will introduce our closing hymn.
Today's closing hymn is number 126 in the UU hymnal, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. Harvey and I will lead you, even though you're invisible to us until Coffee Hub. But I imagine you all singing after a short piano introduction.
Now for the benediction, I invite you to put one hand over your heart and reach out your other hand to the rest of us as if we are touching physically because we are connected as a community. And my benediction for you, for all who see God, may God go with you. For all who embrace life, may life return your affection. And for all who seek a right path, may a way be found and the courage to take it moment by moment, breath by breath, one day at a time. Blessed be. Amen. And next, Jed will lead us in our chalice extinguishing words.
We extinguish our chalice flames, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Stick around. After a short break, you'll have the opportunity to see and interact with real people, many of whom you already know. By the way, start your video now so you don't forget to.